Part 21. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 201. Zhang Laoer quickly stopped his eldest brother. Brother. What do you want to do? That's our mother. Boss Zhang squatted on the ground, holding his head and crying. Finally, Boss Zhang had had enough crying and staggered back to the room as if he had lost his soul. Zhang Ke seemed to remember what happened last night and quickly pulled me back to the house. He looked alert, looked around, and lowered his voice. Master Lu, what we saw last night? I nodded. I was certain that the young man I saw last night was the soul of Mr. Zhang's son. Zhang Ke's face instantly turned pale, his legs went weak, and he collapsed on the bed. The last one, and the last one. Zhang Ke held his head and repeated these words like a man possessed. I sighed and said, don't worry too much. My master said that the whole thing will be stopped after the old man is buried, so no fifth person will die. After listening to my explanation, Zhang Ke's mood was not stable. He stood up and staggered out of the room. I'll go tell them about it. Bang, the door closes. I also had a bad premonition in my heart. I went to Su Tianxian and asked, Master, will the Zhang family's affairs really be resolved because Mr. Zhang is buried? Su Tianxian's eyebrows were furrowed, and her right hand kept calculating. With the movements of her hand, Su Tianxian's face became more and more ugly. After a while, she shook her head and said, I seem to have overlooked something. She stood up and came to the window and glanced at the sky outside. The sky tonight is still filled with dark clouds, extremely depressing. Su Tianxian stood with his hands behind his back, turned around and said, pay more attention and don't let go of any small things. I nodded and left Su Tianxian's room. As soon as I sat down on the bed, the door opened with a creak. Zhang Ke looked lonely, his eyes were dull, and his steps were unsteady. He didn't speak and fell directly on the bed. What's wrong? Zhang Ke slowly opened one of his bloodshot eyes. They don't believe it. Why would you say so? Zhang Ke slowly told me what just happened. I told them what you said, but my elder brother said that Master Tianxian's disciple has a false reputation. If he were really that great, his son would not die. I was speechless for a moment. These were all fates. If I wanted to save Boss Zhang's son, I would have to change my fate. Changing one's fate against the will of heaven is not something that ordinary people can do, even Su Tianxian. Zhang Ke sat up, stretched out his hand, and rubbed his head desperately. I told them that this is all over. It's up to them to believe it or not. Zhang Ke raised his head and stared at me with a pair of dull eyes, but my eldest brother said, since you believe it, then you can die for us. Zhang Ke looked at me like this, which made me feel nervous. I sighed and said, tomorrow my master will use some methods on you to help you escape this disaster. Zhang Ke hummed softly and lay weakly on the bed. At night, Zhang Ke lay next to me, tossing and turning, sighing. In the end, I don't know how long he struggled before he stopped moving. The next day, Zhang Ke got up at dawn. I quickly put on my coat and followed him. Zhang Ke had grown older overnight, and he looked very haggard. He was staggering when he walked and looked like he might fall down at any time. He came to his mother's door, opened it and walked in. I hesitated for a moment and then followed. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Mr. Zhang and Mr. Zhang coming out. It looked like they were delivering breakfast to the old lady. The two of them glanced at Zhang Ke and said nothing, just sighed slightly and shook their heads. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 202. When I walked into the room, I saw an old lady sitting on the bedside wearing a black cotton padded jacket. The old lady's hair was disheveled and almost white, and she still held the urn-like box tightly in her hands. Zhang Ke's footsteps floated and he came straight to the old lady. The old lady raised her cloudy eyes and looked at her youngest son. She stretched out her wrinkled right hand and patted the eaves of the bed, "Xiao, come sit here with mom." As soon as John K sat down, the old lady let out a long sigh. "Xiao, mom just saw Shui Wa. When did he come back?" Hearing this sentence, I got goosebumps all over my body. Shui Wa is the son of Boss Zhang. John K was also shaking all over. The old lady took John K's hand and said, "Xiao, why don't Shui Wa come and see me?" Just now he showed his little head under the crack of the door. I asked him when he would be back. "Yes. How are you studying? Have you been bullied at school?" But Shui Wa just smiled at me and left. The old lady didn't know that Shui Wa had passed away. After saying these words, I could clearly feel the coldness of the atmosphere. These words of the old lady caught my attention. John K's wife saw her father-in-law before she died, and now the old lady saw Shui Wa again. Could this be a sign of death? The next person to die is the old lady? The Zhang family's affairs are not over yet. I can tell this from the expression on Su Tianxuan's face yesterday. The old lady held John K's hand tightly. "Xiao, have you eaten? If you haven't eaten, please put some food on it, then help mom open the box and see what's written on the paper." John K looked at the breakfast on the table and his stomach growled unsatisfactorily. He hasn't eaten anything since last night. He picked up the millet porridge on the table and drank it in a hurry. It seemed that he also wanted to know what was in the box that the old lady had been holding. After eating, the old lady handed the box to John K. Then she groped under the Kong mat for a long time and found a small, simple key. John K took the key and opened the box. When I opened the box, I was greeted by a musty smell that made me unable to open my eyes. I rubbed my sore left eye and looked into the box. What caught my eye was a piece of yellowed letter paper. The old lady rubbed John K's hand and said, "Xiao, mom can't read. Please read out what's written on it." Unable to suppress my inner curiosity, I leaned closer and looked at the contents on the letter. The handwriting on the letter paper was a little blurry, but I could vaguely tell that it was written with a brush. The words were written in flying colors, and I could barely make out the first sentence. "Now there are two Zhang brothers." John K slowly read out the first sentence. After hearing this, the old lady said to one side, "This letter was written by the eminent monk Guan Kong. That day he came here and met your father and your second uncle." John K continued to read, "The 5 elements of their horoscopes are uneven, and their horoscopes are strong, which means they are prosperous ghosts. If they die in a row for 1 month, the family will suffer misfortune and the number of people will be reduced. The number of people is 5. The 5 people are, the second brother of the Zhang family, the third daughter-in-law of the Zhang family, the eldest grandson and..." John K's words stopped and his body began to tremble desperately. At this moment, the door opened and Su Tianxian rushed in. "Master, why are you here?" Su Tianxian glanced at the empty bowl on the table, frowned and looked cold. "It's still a step too late." As soon as Su Tianxian finished speaking, John K fell to the ground with a plop, and blood trickled down the 7 orifices. John K reached out with difficulty and wiped the blood from his nose, then raised a wry smile at the corner of his mouth. At this time, Zhang Lao and Zhang Lao Er heard the noise and rushed in. When they saw John K lying on the ground, they exclaimed in unison, "Lao-san! Did you drink that bowl of porridge? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 203. Boss Zhang quickly helped John K up. John K looked painful and nodded with difficulty. Boss Zhang slapped him in the face. "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Call an ambulance quickly." Boss Zhang quickly picked up John K and ran outside. The old lady looked a little confused and reached out to grab the empty bowl on the table. Seeing this, Zhang Lao kicked the table over and said in great pain, "Mom. It's all my fault that the boss and I were obsessed with ghosts. We were both wondering. You are so old, if there is really the last person, I will let you take the blame. But I didn't expect that my little brother drank." After Zhang Lao said this, he hugged his head and cried, and then rushed out of the room, followed closely by Su Tianxian. I picked up the yellowed letter paper on the ground, and the last sentence on it was clearly: "The Zhang family's eldest son and his son." I was extremely frightened in my heart. What kind of existence was this sky-gazing monk? He could predict this. I didn't care about the dazed old lady on the Kong, and rushed out of the door. When I came to the yard, I stopped. I saw Boss Zhang retreating from the outside with Zhang Ke on his back, and then the sound of wooden fish tapping echoed in the air. Su Tianxuan's expression condensed, and he took a step forward to protect everyone behind him. I stared in the direction of the door closely, and the next moment, one foot stepped in. Amitabha. My expression instantly became extremely nervous. This voice, could it be the double-faced Buddha of good and evil? A monk wearing a red cassock and holding a Zen staff walked in. The monk covered his face with a bamboo hat, so he couldn't see clearly. When I saw this monk, I felt doubtful. This is not a double-faced Buddha of good and evil. Because I didn't feel the aura of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil in him. At this time, the old lady walked out shakily, holding the door. When she saw the monk, she exclaimed, "Monk Guankong." The eminent monk Guankong bowed deeply to everyone. "Here comes the poor monk." The old lady was very emotional and her old body was trembling. She staggered towards monk Guankong, but was stopped by Zhang Lao. "Mom. What are you doing? Are you still going to believe this guy now? If he hadn't talked nonsense, would so many people in our family have died?" The old lady's footsteps stagnated, and two clear tears flowed from her cloudy eyes. "This is all God's will. God's will." The eminent monk Guankong looked at Su Tianxian, bowed deeply to Su Tianxian, and said respectfully, "Master Tianxian, all this is God's will. Only by handing over the body and soul of Shenxia to me can all this end." Su Tianxian stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes like a pool of clear water. As he looked around, he had an elegant and calm temperament that made people attracted by him, ashamed of himself, and did not dare to blaspheme. At the same time, he also carried an invisible pressure. "What if I don't?" The eminent monk Guankong took a deep breath and said, "Since Master Tianxian refuses, the poor monk has no choice but to offend." As soon as he finished speaking, Guankong slammed the Zen staff in his hand towards the ground. With a bang, dust flew up, and a green-faced and fanged monster emerged from under the monk Guankong's cassock. The monster looks like a monkey, with jet black hair all over its body. These hairs are like the sharp spikes on a porcupine. This scene scared everyone in the Zhang family. I quickly shouted to them, "Hurry up and get in the house." Everyone in the Zhang family quickly got into the house. Facing the extremely fast monster, Su Tianxuan's expression remained unchanged as he slowly stretched out his right hand. In an instant, a thunderbolt appeared. The thunder and lightning seemed to be conscious and moved towards the monster. Crackling. The 9 layers thunder technique instantly knocked the monster's soul to pieces. When the eminent monk Guankong saw this scene, he laughed strangely, as expected of Master Tianxian. "He is really powerful, but do you think this poor monk came here unprepared?" Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 204. Su Tianxian did not react at all to the words of the monk Guankong, and just looked at him quietly. The eminent monk Guankong slowly took a step forward, and clouds of black mist emerged from under his cassock. After a moment, the black mist surrounded him. Just when he was about to take action, the door of a room suddenly opened, and Hua Xiu slowly walked out holding a red oil paper umbrella. When the eminent monk Guankong saw Huashiu, his expression changed drastically. Millennium Zombie. The eminent monk Guankong immediately stopped his hand, and the black mist slowly returned under his cassock. He glanced at Su Tianqian solemnly, then at Huashiu, then turned and left. Watching the monk Guankong leave, I was slightly startled. Why did he run away? But if you think about it carefully, Su Tianqian is very difficult to deal with, and now there is a 1,000-year-old zombie like Huashiu. Anyone with any brains would choose to retreat. Su Tianqian did not chase him, but turned around and returned to the house. The Zhang family was panic-stricken and fearful. The scene just now had a huge psychological impact on them. Su Tianqian came to Zhang Kei's body, stretched out her slender hand and placed it on his forehead. After a while, Su Tianqian sighed, "The soul has left the body and gone to the underworld, now we are in trouble." I quickly asked, "Master, what should we do?" Su Tianqian looked at me and said slowly, "Go to the underworld and take back his soul. We must not let his soul fall into the hands of others. Zhang Kei is one of the 5 great gods of death. If his soul is snatched away by the double-faced Buddha of good and evil, he will be one step closer to completing the 5 suns in a row. Moreover, the double-faced Buddha of good and evil is not the only one who wants to destroy the evil spirits. The big shot in Wudeng Alley was also eyeing him." Su Tianqian asked the Zhang family to bury Zhang Kei as soon as possible. If he did not bury him as soon as possible, there might be another incident. The Zhang family also followed the instructions and did not even hold a funeral. At noon that day, the Zhang family buried Zhang Kei under the auspices of Su Tianqian. After doing this, we headed to Jiyuntang without stopping. On the way, I asked, "Master, why do you want to bury Zhang Kei's body? If we find his soul, wouldn't we be able to repay him?" Su Tianqian glanced at me, shook his head, and said, "The god of void death is a ferocious evil. After death, he will definitely go to the 18th level of hell. He will never be reincarnated. If Zhang Kei is allowed to return to the sun, he will be punished by God." I suddenly realized that soon, we were back at Jiyuntang. The next thing I have to do is to enter the underworld and find Zhang Kei before the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. Then Master, how should we enter the underworld? Can we pass through the gate of the underworld? No, the gate of the underworld is only for souls to enter. People cannot go to the underworld through the gate of the underworld. Su Tianqian pondered for a moment, stood up and said to me, "This time the matter is more troublesome, I will go with you." When I heard that Su Tianqian was going with me, I felt much more at ease. Su Tianqian did not tell me how to enter the underworld. She stayed at Jiyuntang for a while and then left, not returning until evening. Also returning with her was Xia 11. Xia 11 seemed to have emerged from those glooms, and her whole person and temperament had undergone earth-shaking changes. She was wearing a pink off-shoulder chiffon skirt with a cute bow at the waist. Layers of lace were embellished on the beautiful skirt, and her dark hair hung down on her shoulders. Before Xia 11 and I could say hello, Su Tianqian led her to the 2nd floor. When the two of them came down again, I was stunned on the spot. What surprised me was Xia 11's appearance at this moment. Because she looks exactly like me. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 205. Seeing my surprised look, Xia 11 smiled slightly and said, "Are you surprised?" Although her appearance had changed, her voice had not. "How is this going?" Su Tianqian explained to me, Xia 11 is a descendant of the Xia family of painted skin. She is born with the ability to become painted skin, but this ability was restricted by her grandfather and has never been revealed. Seeing that I was still full of doubts, Xia 11 continued to explain, the Xia family has experienced a huge change and branches have appeared. One group is mixed in modern society and engaged in the profession of embalmers, that is, people like my grandfather. The other branch is its own sect, mixing with yin and yang. The painted skin ghost is the evil thing enshrined by that branch. I was a little surprised. I didn't expect Xia 11 to have such a life experience. My grandpa told me this in my dream, and the other branch has gradually declined. In order to be stubborn, they targeted me, so I had to learn to paint skin. Fortunately, Master Tianqian is here to help me, so I can change my face be like you. Although Xia 11 gave me an explanation, new doubts came to my mind again. I asked Su Tianqian, Master, why did you let Xia 11 become like me? Su Tianqian pondered for a moment and replied, there are people in the secret who are eyeing you. Once they find out that you have left Tianfu City, they will definitely flock to the underworld to cause trouble for you. Someone in the dark? Su Tianqian came to my side and said softly, you have to know that your fate and luck are very tempting to those people. The reason why they didn't come to me is because they have a lot of scruples in the world, but in this world it's different in the underworld. I nodded. Since Su Tianqian has arranged it this way, she must have her reasons. All I have to do is follow it. When night fell, Xia 11 stayed at Jiyuntang instead of me, while Su Tianqian and I headed to the Barren Mountains. I don't know where the destination of this trip is, so I can only follow Su Tianqian. The two of us were walking on a gloomy path. The dark night seemed like endless thick ink smeared heavily on the sky. The night fog came in, and the midsummer night was a bit cool. Under the hazy moonlight, few stars could be seen. There was a deserted area beside me, with lone trees and boulders. Everything seemed so quiet. I don't know how long I walked, but my field of vision suddenly became wider. I looked into the distance, and in the hazy night, the outline of a house caught my eye. Su Tianqian quickened his pace and walked in. He saw that it was an antique inn. The inn is very simple, giving people the impression that it comes from ancient times. There is a sign directly above the door with 4 ancient seal scripts written on it. Yin Yang Inn. Su Tianqian stretched out his hand and knocked lightly on the wooden door a few times. The dull knocking sound was very clear in the wilderness. After a moment, there was a creak and the door of the inn opened. An old and pale face suddenly appeared in front of my eyes, which shocked me. The door was opened by an old lady. The old lady's face was as pale as marble, and her old wrinkled face was full of pockmarks, not to mention how terrifying it was. Su Tianqian saw the old lady and said slowly, it's cold and the road is long. Can the store owner allow us to rest here? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 206. The pockmarked old lady looked Su Tianqian over. When she saw Su Tianxian's extraordinary temperament, her originally gloomy face instantly became extremely flattering. Please come in quickly. Su Tianqian and I walked into the inn. The architectural style inside the inn is still very simple, just like the ancient inns in TV series. However, this place always gives me an eerie feeling. The pockmarked old lady led the two of us to a room on the second floor of the inn. She hesitated for a moment and then said, you two gentlemen, no matter what noise you hear at night, please do not open the door. Su Tianqian nodded lightly, indicating that he understood, and then closed the door. Why Su Tianqian brought me here, I think I already know the reason. The Yin Yang Inn is located at the intersection of Yin and Yang, and its purpose is to provide a place for the dead souls who take the initiative to go to the underworld to rest. After a certain period of time, ghost messengers will come in person to take away the souls stranded in the Yin Yang Inn and enter the underworld. If a living person accidentally enters the Yin Yang Inn, he will be taken away by ghosts. If you want to avoid such a thing from happening, you must do what the pockmarked old lady said. Don't open the door no matter what noise you hear, and you'll have a safe night. Su Tianqian took out a veil from somewhere and placed it on the table. Then he came to me, stretched out his green-white fingers, and tapped on my shoulders and between my eyebrows. The next moment, I felt a bone-chilling chill coming towards me. Su Tianxian extinguished 3 of my yang fires, and then she handed me another copper coin. After a while, there will be a knock on the door. Put this copper coin in your mouth. No matter what you see or hear, don't speak. I took the copper coin and instantly understood Su Tianxuan's intention. She extinguished my 3 yang fires to increase the yin energy in me, and this copper coin was to prevent my yang energy from leaking out. In this case, the ghosts will mistake me for a dead soul and take me away. It's still early, so you should lie down in bed and rest for a while. Su Tianxian said to me. I looked at the small wooden bed, hesitated and said, Master, you should rest. How can an apprentice lie down and let the master sit? Su Tianxian looked at me deeply, and an inexplicable emotion appeared between his eyebrows. She nodded and lay down gently on the wooden bed. I saw that Su Tianxian was still wearing her shoes and said, Master, let me take off your shoes for you. It's very uncomfortable to rest like this. After that, I didn't wait for Su Tianxian to speak, half kneeling in front of the bed and took off Su Tianxuan's shoes. Su Tianxian wanted to struggle to get up, but my hands were already on her shoes, and I could clearly feel Su Tianxuan's body stiffening. When I slowly took off Su Tianxuan's shoes, I was instantly attracted to her 2 jade feet. Su Tianxuan's jade feet are small and exquisite, as warm as jade, red and white contrasting with each other, and the jade bamboo shoots are pointy, gorgeous, and dazzling. While I was taking off Su Tianxuan's shoes, she didn't dare to move. Seeing that I hadn't stood up for a long time, she raised her eyes and glanced at me. Seeing me staring blankly at his feet, she couldn't help but said, Lu Su, why don't you get up? I came to my senses instantly and stood up quickly. Just as I was about to apologize to Su Tianxian, I saw her turning her face to the side and no longer looking at me. I was slightly stunned. Why did I feel like my master was shy? This must be my misunderstanding. How could someone like Su Tianxian be shy? I sat bored at the table. As time passed, sleepiness came over me. I glanced at Su Tianxian lying on the bed, leaned on the table, and fell asleep. In the past, I would always be alert in this situation, but today I dozed off. This should be because Su Tianxian is by my side. I feel very at ease when she is around. Half asleep and half awake, I vaguely heard a dull knock on the door. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 207. I woke up with a start, looked around and found that Su Tianxian was already standing at the door wearing a veil. She glanced at me, and I quickly took the copper coin into my mouth. The coldness in the body became more intense as the copper coin entered his mouth. Su Tianxian came to the door and put her jade hand gently on the door handle. John K's soul has entered the 18th level of hell, so we must find a way to enter the 18th level of hell and then bring him out. When I heard the words 18 levels of hell, I shuddered subconsciously. At this moment, Su Tianxian opened the wooden door with a creak. A bone-chilling cold wind came over the door, and a tall figure appeared in front of the door in the darkness. The man had the head of a bull and the body of a man, holding a steel fork. He was tall and looked very scary. What a ghost! I was horrified inside. Nyota's cold eyes slowly glanced at me and Su Tianxian. It's time to hit the road. Su Tianxian did not answer him, but followed him quietly. When I walked out of the inn room, the scene in front of me made my pupils tremble. The doors of all the inn rooms were open, and countless ghosts stood at the door without saying a word, with numb expressions and dead eyes. These ghosts are old and young, some are wearing cyan shrouds, some have tattered clothes and are dripping with blood. In addition, there are many ghosts with missing arms and legs. These ghosts are supposed to remain in the same miserable condition as when they died. Su Tianxian whispered in my ear, no matter what you hear or see, Don't look back or speak. I nodded. The ghost messenger Nyotu knocked on all the doors of the inn. After a while, all the ghosts were led to the lobby on the first floor of the inn. At this time, the door of the inn opened, and a monster with a human head and a horse's face walked in. I never expected that I would encounter a bull-headed horse noodle here. Goichi-ma faced Goichi Niutou and said, "Why are there so many today?" Nyotu glanced at the ghosts. "I don't know either. Let's take them away first." Mamian nodded and shouted loudly, and all the ghosts and spirits followed him like zombies. Walking out of the inn, the scene outside has changed drastically. The bright moon, trees, and wilderness disappeared without a trace, replaced by endless darkness. In addition, everywhere you look is covered in white fog, and you can't tell the direction at all. The bullhead leads the way in front of the ghosts, while the horse face follows behind the ghosts. The team moved forward in the white mist, surrounded by dead silence. There was no chirping of insects or birds, and it was so quiet that it made people feel panicked. I don't know how long I've been walking, but the temperature dropped sharply, and a bad premonition arose in my heart. Suddenly, a scream rang out in my ears. I looked for the sound and saw a pale and withered ghost hand quietly protruding from the mist. The ghost hand suddenly grabbed a middle-aged wandering soul. Puff! The middle-aged wandering soul's head was pinched in half. Immediately afterwards, all the ghosts were frightened into confusion and fled in a hurry. The one closest to me was pierced through the chest by a sudden steel fork, and finally died. This scene made my brows jump. The cold voice of Niutou came. "If you want to die, just keep running." This sentence instantly silenced the ghosts. They lined up again and followed Niutou. This time, the numb expressions on their faces disappeared, replaced by panic. They are afraid of those monsters in the fog. My mood is inevitably tense. Continuing to move forward, another ghost hand suddenly appeared. The ghost hand was very close to me, and it just brushed against the tip of my nose. I was startled and subconsciously picked up Leiju. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 208. There are 18 ghosts on both sides in front of the pass, each with green flowers, teeth, and claws, and different postures, vivid and vivid. The ancient trees on the side of the pass provide shade, the birds and crows are noisy, and the cold stars and moon make it feel eerie and terrifying. There are ghost soldiers guarding the gate on both sides of the gate. They hold swords and halberds to check the road guide. Nyotu came to the guarding ghost soldier, whispered a few words, and then fixed his eyes on me. Then the ghost soldier nodded. A group of fierce ghosts lined up in front of the ghost soldier, then took out a piece of yellow paper and handed it to the ghost soldier. The ghost soldier looked carefully and then let him go. Seeing this scene, I was a little panicked. The piece of yellow paper held in the hands of the ghosts is called Guiding the Way. It is the certificate for the soul after death to report to the underworld. And I have nothing. Will I be stopped here? I secretly glanced at Su Tianxian. I couldn't see her expression clearly due to the veil, but I could feel that she was very calm at the moment. Soon it was Su Tianxian's turn to come to the ghost soldier. Seeing that Su Tianxian did not show the way, the ghost soldier showed a little anger on his pale face. But when he was about to have an attack, Su Tianxian suddenly burst out with a surge of righteousness. The ghosts lingering in front of the gate of hell stopped one by one and looked at Su Tianxian blankly. The ghost soldier's expression changed drastically. "You, how did you come here?" The ghost soldier's tone was trembling, and his voice was full of disbelief. Su Tianxian glanced at him lightly, and an ethereal and melodious voice came out from under the veil. "When will I report my work to you?" As soon as these words came out, the ghost soldier's body trembled non-stop. He quickly lowered his head and said condescendingly to Su Tianxian, "Yes, yes, yes, Master Su Tianxi does not need to report to us. Please come in. Please come in." Su Tian, Master. Su Tianxuan's true identity is actually a heavenly master. I was horrified in my heart. No wonder there is a statue of Zhang Tianqi enshrined in Jiyun Hall. Su Tianxian stepped forward and walked into the ghost gate. When passing by the ghost soldier, he whispered, "I don't want others to know about this matter." The ghost soldier nodded repeatedly. This time it was my turn, and the ghost soldier let me go without even looking at me. After entering the gate of hell, the bull-headed horse face disappeared, and I don't know where it went. There should be other ghosts leading the way on the next journey. At this moment, a cold voice sounded behind me. "Follow me." Hearing this voice, I turned my head blankly. I saw Xiang Yi standing behind me. Xiang Yi also noticed me immediately. His cold and majestic face suddenly became dull. He exclaimed, "Why are you here?" I quickly made a silent gesture to him. Xiang Yi realized something in an instant, and quickly lowered his voice and whispered in my ear, "You kid is really not afraid of death. Do you know how dangerous your situation is now?" I looked at him with some confusion. Xiang Yi hit me hard on the head with his skill and cursed, "The god of death is dead. The big shot already knows that you did it. He wants to kill you to silence you. I originally thought that you would be protected by Su Tianxian. I don't need to say more, but you kid actually tried to die and entered here. Tell me, what are you doing here, kid?" I pointed to my mouth to indicate that I couldn't speak. Xiang Yi was startled for a moment, and then realized something. He looked at Su Tianxian aside, quickly approached him, and asked in a low voice, "Master Tianxian. If this kid is confused, you will be confused too. How could you let him come here?" Su Tianxian glanced at him and said, "The void death god cannot be handed over to any party, so we have to take it back." The corner of Xiang Yi's mouth twitched slightly, and he quickly retreated, keeping a certain distance from Su Tianxian. "You are really crazy, don't say I have met you. No. Don't say I know you, I don't want to lose my mind." With that said, he was about to leave in a hurry. But Su Tianxuan's next words made Xiang Yi stop. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 209. Lu Su is your agent in the underworld. If that big shot knows that Lu Su ruined his plan, do you think you can escape? Xiang Yi turned around, his eyes full of anger. "You threaten me." Su Tianxian shrugged helplessly, "I'm not threatening you, I'm just stating the facts." After Xiang Yi heard this, his expression was dull. He was stunned for a few seconds. Then he came to me and cursed, "Damn it, was my head kicked by a donkey back then? I have to ask you to be my agent in the world. I am really unlucky for 8 lifetimes. I can't open my mouth to speak now. If I may, I must say one thing. Didn't you ask me to work for you just to be lazy? Let's go, we are all grasshoppers on a rope anyway, we can't escape even if we want to." In this way, Xiang Yi took Su Tianxian and me on the next journey. Along the way, Xiang Yi kept talking. The general content is that he originally wanted to have a tryst with his little female ghosts after get off work, but everything was ruined because of my arrival. Even if you give him a lot of money, it can't make up for his wounded heart. When I first met Xiang Yi, I just thought he was aloof. After more contact with him, I found out that he was particularly double-standard. He was vicious when he was in office, but in private he was a talkative and lustful person. After walking out of the gate of hell, the next step is the road to hell. Huangquan Road is the road of introduction, but also the road of freedom. There are many lonely wild ghosts on the Huangquan Road. They are those who died before the end of their yang shao. They can neither go to heaven nor be reincarnated, nor can they enter the human world. They can only wander on the Huangquan road, waiting for their Yangshao to arrive before they can reach the 9th lunar month. You report in. Not long after walking, the eyes were filled with fiery red flowers. Flowers of the other shore were blooming on the Huangquan road. From a distance, they looked like a carpet paved with blood. These flowers of the other shore also added a bit of color to the monotonous underworld. Suddenly, a strange floral fragrance came. The next moment, there was a tearing pain in my head. Immediately, fragmented memory fragments appeared in my mind. A huge coffin appeared in front of me. This coffin was extremely familiar to me. It was a sky coffin. Then the scene changed: dragon throne, soldiers, battlefield. Seeing me dazed, Xiangyi patted my shoulder and asked, "What's wrong with you?" I suddenly realized that the memory fragments in my mind were broken and could never be reunited. I shook my head at him. Xiangyi looked at the fiery red Bianhua, pondered for a moment and said, "The fragrance of Bianhua can make people recall their past and present lives?" "What did you see?" I rolled my eyes at Xiangyi. "I could have seen more, but you interrupted me. The road to Huangquan is long, with no end in sight, and I don't know how long I have walked." The blood-red flowers around me began to decrease, and the dots looked like blood dripping on the snow, which was particularly conspicuous. Immediately afterwards, countless ghosts appeared in front of me. They lined up with different expressions, mostly sad. Xiangyi looked a little solemn when he saw this scene. He said to himself, "It shouldn't be. There won't be so many ghosts lining up to drink Mengpo soup at Nehi Bridge." Su Tianqian also noticed something was wrong. Xiangyi came to her and muttered a few words in a low voice, and Su Tianqian nodded. Then Xiangyi walked towards Nehi Bridge. After a while, Xiangyi hurried back, his face gloomy and his expression serious. "Now we're in trouble. Master Tingting is at the bridge." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 210. Listen. The psychic beast lurking under the Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva Sutra table. You can identify everything in the world by listening, and you are especially good at listening to people's hearts. In Journey to the West, there is a story about the Monkey King who can tell the real from the fake. After hearing this, Su Tianqian frowned and remained silent. Upon seeing this, Xiangyi quickly said, "Otherwise, we'd better not go. Mr. Tingting is there. As long as he sees Lu Su, he will definitely know about the Kongshensha. It will definitely cause a lot of trouble." Xiangyi's words made me think deeply. As the psychic beast of Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva, Diding will not come to Nehi Bridge for no reason. Thinking about the ability to listen again, a terrible thought came to my mind. Could it be that the big man Xiangyi talks about is Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva? I quickly pulled Xiangyi's clothes and looked at him with doubtful eyes. Xiangyi sighed, looked around, and then whispered in my ear, "You guessed it right, the big man I mentioned is Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva. I told you before that there is a magical artifact buried underground in Tianfu City, and everyone takes this magical artifact as their own. However, if you obtain a magic weapon, you will definitely lose your life. Very few people know about the Lightless Alley because it is a scandal. Do you understand what I am saying?" I nodded. What happened in Lightless Alley was truly outrageous. Imprisoning so many souls just to cultivate a god of void death is an act that is outraged by both humans and gods. As Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva, the god of the underworld, he would naturally not let this scandal leak out. This also explains why Diting came here. Xiangyi glanced at the advancing ghost team and said with a somewhat serious expression, "Master Diting is here to wipe out everything and completely wipe out the scandal of Lightless Alley from the world." Su Tianqian was still deep in thought, but Xiangyi couldn't help it any longer. "Speaking of Su Tianqian, you and I have known each other for so many years. Today you just listen to my advice and leave as soon as possible. As for the god of death, don't even think about it." Su Tianqian raised his eyes, shook his head, and said very firmly, the 5 great evil spirits cannot be sacrificed. They must be held in hand. Xiang Yi also understood Su Tianxuan's temper and shrugged helplessly, yes, you can do whatever you want. With your strength and identity, De Ting will be afraid of you. Su Tianqian came to my side and said, give me some blood from your right arm. I quickly activated my soul-stealing blood hand, and bright red blood came into everyone's eyes. Xiang Yi looked a little surprised when he saw that I could skillfully operate the soul-stealing blood hand. He looked at Su Tianqian and asked in surprise, are you thinking? Su Tianqian said nothing. After she got blood from my right arm, she kneaded the formula with her left hand and muttered something in her mouth, and then pointed the sword formula with her left hand at the blood on her right hand. There was a flash of golden light, and the blood seemed to be alive. It floated up from her palm and sank into my eyebrows. The next moment, a bright red mark was engraved on my eyebrows. I sealed your soul with the blood of the soul-stealing bloody hand, let's see if I can get away with it. Su Tianqian said. After saying that, she looked at Xiang Yi. Xiang Yi shrugged and said helplessly, you guys go ahead, I can't show up if Master Diding is there. Su Tianqian didn't say anything, looked at Xiang Yi deeply, turned around and took me away. Like other wandering souls, Su Tianqian and I lined up and approached Nehi Bridge step by step. The team moved forward at a slow pace, and soon I could see the Nehi Bridge not far away. The Nehi Bridge is very wide and large, with a simple and mysterious atmosphere. Under the bridge is the churning water of the forgotten river, and the white mist is shrouded above, just like a fairyland. And standing by the bridge was a man in black.